Hi, this is Anna, Imagination with a Healing Garden. Thank you for joining me for Shifting Perspectives. And if you are new to my channel, I am a philosopher, psychologist, and sociologist of 30 years. So on this one, we are going to be talking about what I love to refer to as exploratory dialogues. I have a ball of thread, and I'm starting to pull it apart, but it's got like 5 different threads all tangled in on itself. And now I'm pulling apart this third thread. This thread is about debate versus exploratory dialogue. Now, I love philosophy so much. In philosophy, there is a subject, a branch of philosophy that is referred to as formal argument and debate. Now, formal argument and debate 101 is a full how to have a proper argument and discussion with somebody without emotion involved. In fact, if it gets emotional, if you raise voices, if it gets heated, you failed. It's a very simple, basic process of philosophically looking at formal argument. Under no circumstance should emotion ever be involved when you have a discussion or a debate. Now, when we hear debate, a lot of people think debate class, debate club. Attorneys are phenomenal for this. And I have had many experience with attorneys who get very angry, heated, passionate, emotional. Guess what? Boom, they failed. The minute you become emotional, you're not debating, you're arguing. Now, breaking it down in case you are new here, I like to go over theory and then relatable to you, and then I like to give you an example. So the theory behind formal argument and debate goes like this. You have basically a bunch of premise. That is fact, or that is a statement that presents a logical fact. Technically, facts don't exist. So says a whole bunch of philosophers, physics, neuroscientists, psychologists. Truth is subjective. You don't believe me? Look up the word truth in the dictionary. There are 2 highly contradicting definitions of the word truth. Case in point, we can't even agree on what truth means. Therefore, truth does not exist. We'll go over that later in another video. I've already covered it 18 million times. I'm not here to discuss that. See my other videos. Truth is subjective. Truth is an opinion. Truth does not exist. For this reason, when I say truth, I am actually referring to personal truth or logic. Truth in my world means logic, and lie means illogic. When you apply these words, it's phenomenal. Now, here's the issue. You have a human being with milestones that occur in their life, and they take in millions of data points from the time they are born to the present moment to the time they die. Millions. So all of these data points, when combined together in the gorgeous cocktail of a human perspective, a human thought, a human being, they form their own personal truth, their own logic, which follows the guidelines of their logical experience through life with all of their milestone data points. It is not possible to have a conversation with someone, to provide them with all of this back data, to say, before we have a discussion, here are all of my milestones. There's only 8 million of them. When you've gone through my 8 million data points in my subconscious and conscious mind, then you will understand my perspective. Every person has that same concept. It's not possible. So what we get when we sit down and we have a conversation with someone is a very brief snapshot, a photograph of this massive data point. It's not possible to correct another person's perspective. It's really not possible because you require all of the data to make an informed decision, which means you are the only expert and authority on your opinion. So when you present your perspective out there, under no circumstance is anyone in a position to contradict you. Now, there's going to be a million smartasses out there that sit there and want to argue scientific fact, quote unquote, like the chemistry of water, or flat earthers are going to probably be brought up as an example. I am not referring to concrete thinkers. This is abstract. Now, that being said, let's take a look at formal argument and debate. When you get back into debate is something where logically, philosophically, it's supposed to be a calm, back and forth discussion. But that's not what's happening. What happens instead is a lot of people argue and scream back and forth, or there's just a lot of screaming. Going to my example, experienced downright physical abuse every time a debate was even attempted. So I very quickly associated any kind of talking with being beaten. So I didn't talk. And then the flip side of that is anytime I even dared approach the topic, I didn't. There was no daring. I avoided politics like the plague because the men in my family, when politics came up, became this massive testosterone, toxic masculinity of just a bunch of men screaming at each other. And yes, in a couple cases, fistfights broke out. Gotta love those third perspectives. So I associated politics, arguing, debate, discussion with violence. They were synonymous for a long time. About 10 years ago, it's 2015. In 2015, I created something called Exploratory Dialogues. This is actually the name of my blog, Exploratory Dialogue. And I went into my therapy where I would just have this kind of discussion with her. And there was this one day deep into my therapy, it was about a year into my therapy, and I mentioned exploratory dialogue. She goes, I really love these conversations with you. And I said, yeah, exploratory dialogue. And she went, oh my God, I love that. And I said, it's dialogue where you are deliberately using the dialogue to explore yourself, perspectives, the perspectives of others. But it's a dialogue. And the reason why I refer to it as a dialogue is because it is a back and forth exchange, zero emotion. It's just thinking. So today, I had a situation. I wouldn't say a situation. I had a question about disapproval and a realization that I never felt the emotion disapproval. And yet it's one of her emotions that we're working through. So I needed to understand more about what the feeling actually felt like so I could draw up logical conclusion based off of my data. So I called her up and we had about a 1 hour conversation back and forth where we analyzed what exactly it feels like and where it stems from. In conclusion, you have to have hope to obtain one's approval in order to even feel disapproval. And you have to value the approval in which you should or you have been expected to obtain. And I explained to her, yeah, there was no hope. There was no hope that I could even remotely try to get the approval of my father. That was a done deal by the time I was 2. So I never had hope to get approval. Therefore, I never valued it. So I never felt disapproval. I couldn't because of my hippie powers. So we analyzed it without any emotion, without any trauma, without any triggers from either one of us. We just sat back and we discussed. And when it was over, she went, this was a really amazing. It was the first time she discussed and we did a session without any emotion involved. And so it was a very new experience for her. And we stepped back from the experience going, wow, this was fascinating. And I said, yeah, I call this exploratory dialogue. And she's like, this was so much more effective. I'm like, yes, this is how you're supposed to do it. And that brought me to the question of debate. About a week ago, I went out to a luncheon with a friend. And the first half of the luncheon was spent with us almost screaming at each other. I'm just going to lay it right out here. I presented my argument. He contradicted it and started pulling apart my perspective. I got defensive and started defending my perspective. Like, what are you doing ripping apart my perspective? He wanted to pull it apart and dissect it. I said, no, that's what my perspective is not for that. After about 2 hours, I finally explained to him, look, I didn't just pull this opinion out of my ass. I built it for my own sanity off of my own logical database of 8 million points with which to present to you in an argument so I can function sanely away from the illogical nonsense of Wonderland. It's not up for dissection. It's not up for evaluation. It's not available for you to logically try and pull apart for yourself. That is not what my perspective is for. My perspective is not for anybody except myself. I strongly encourage you to take this same attitude for your own perspective, because this is what's really missing from our culture is our insanity, and our sanity is dependent upon the logical argument of our perspective. And when you allow other people, when you put it out there for other people to come in and rip it apart, it is your sanity that they are ripping apart. And you are broken down, confused, crying, emotional, and lost because they've ripped apart your perspective. When your entire sanity revolves around your perspective. It's extraordinary every time I work with a client, how a client will have their own solid perspective. A parent will call them up, a teacher will rip them apart, a boyfriend or a partner or a wife will step in and shred their perspective. The person will shift their entire logical comprehension from themselves and their perspective over to the illogical, incompatible perspective of another person, and they'll lose themselves. I will then step in as the therapist and put them back together again, and I will rebuild their perspective around themselves, focused on their truth. I will anchor them in their truth, remind them of what it is they want, love, desire, need, and what their goals are in life, and we armor them up. And they go, wow, I feel better. Of course you feel better. You have your perspective reformed, back together, and re-ironed up. Don't let other people step in and rip apart your perspective. Your sanity depends upon it. And yet we do it. And it's this concept that that's exactly what perspectives are for other people to come in, rip them apart, use whatever they want, and throw the rest away like you're garbage. Your perspective is your sanity. Don't let other people touch it. More on that later. Anyway, so I have something that I call exploratory dialogue. So I walked away from this luncheon with his friend and I said, I think I hate debate. I really fucking hate debate. I think I've reached that point because debate means passionate, angry, violent, verbally aggressive arguing. That's not fun for me. So instead, I have something that I refer to as exploratory dialogue. And this concept of truth and lies, well, first of all, 99% of the people out there who try and talk to me have not studied philosophy, formal argument, and debate, or Socrates and Plato. So I really don't care what they think truth means because they don't have the credentials to back it up. So I like my definition of truth. I like my definition of lie. It's compatible with Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, and my big fat books over here. So that's what mine are based on. And if the dictionary can't even agree on what the definition of truth is, and it can't, because it literally tells you, well, this is what religious people say truth is, this is what scientific people say truth is, and this is what the government, law, courts says truth is. So I have to pick one. I have to agree with religious people, lawyers, or scientists. And the scientists I talk to all agree with Socrates that truth is abstract and doesn't exist. So I'm going to go with the philosopher's definition of truth. And that's really it. Truth is one of those gorgeous words that is only defined by what area of study you are master in. I was doing this yesterday when I was studying physics, and I got onto the topic of matter. No, was it mass? It was mass. And I wanted to define what mass was. So I was all over the physics books, and I love it because the physicists started pulling out philosophy. Well, Aristotle defined mass as this. Yes, I know. I'm very familiar with Aristotle's work. And it just went on from there. what mass is. The mathematicians had their definition. The physicists had their definitions. Aristotle had his definition. I was really enjoying this conversation. And I went, matter really matters. Mass really matters. I need a solid definition, guys. And I went, wait, chemists. Chemists have a definition. I got to go with what the chemists say. And I'll tell you why. And this is what I said yesterday on my podcast. Because if a chemist is wrong, things go boom in the laboratory. So of all the people in the world to believe, I'm going to side with the chemists on this one, because if the chemists get it wrong, things blow up. So I went over to chemistry and I looked up what the chemists defined as mass, and we have an answer. Definition is the first rule of formal argument and debate in philosophy. The very first rule: define the words you are using, because the word matters. The word has all the weight. According to law, I believe, according to law, that lying is intent to deceive. But in psychology, lying is a defense mechanism because somebody does not feel psychologically safe to tell the truth. A person lies because the truth scares them, because being honest is dangerous. That's why a person lies. Now, those two definitions don't match up. Not at all, do they? And they are complementary at the same time. When you study philosophy, you're actually studying perspective. That is really what you are studying. This is what I call the lost subject of Alexandria, because after the 4th century, the subject of perspective was lost. And what was remaining were the fragments of thoughts of all of the philosophers: Aristotle's point of view, Socrates' point of view, Plato's point of view, all of these opinions. And they were all reflective of one concept: truth. What is truth? And if you look at the library, the University of Alexandria's curriculum, you'll notice that these subjects are actually all different perspectives exploring this topic of what is truth. What is the ultimate truth? Religious people will tell you it's their religion. Scientists will tell you it's their science facts. Physicists will tell you it's physics. Mathematicians will tell you it's numbers. Astrologists will tell you it's the stars. An artist will tell you it's art. A musician will tell you it's music. You know what they're all actually saying? And this was the most extraordinary thing I learned when attending Alexandria. It's subjective. Your truth, your personal truth, is exactly that. Truth is 100% defined by what you decide it is, based 100% on your perspective. So don't let people completely shred your perspective, because it took 8 million plus milestones and data points of your entire life to accumulate it. And your entire existence of sanity depends on it. It is not up for subjection to other people. If you love shit like this, like, subscribe, follow, comment below. Let me know what part of the show resonates with you. This is a fraction of Triadic Healing. If you want to know more about Triadic Healing, click on the link below. Thank you so much, and may the kindest of words always find you.